It always begins in the quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind that swallows you whole. The kind that makes you stare at the screen of your phone until the glow burns into your eyes, waiting for a name that no longer lights up. You tell yourself you won't check, but you do. Again and again. Each second stretches like an eternity, and in that silence, you realize how loud absence can be. It hums through your chest, a static ache that refuses to fade. Maybe you've felt it in the supermarket, reaching for their favorite brand of cereal before remembering it's no longer for them. Or when a song plays unexpectedly, one you both claimed as yours, and suddenly you're no longer in your living room. You're back in their car, laughing at a joke only the two of you understood. The melody becomes a ghost, a time machine, pulling you into a moment that doesn't exist anymore. Breakups aren't clean. They don't shatter like glass. They dissolve, slowly, quietly, into the smallest parts of your daily life. You don't just lose the person, you lose the morning text that said, "Good luck today." The familiar rhythm of their footsteps, the comfort of knowing someone was always in your corner. It's not only their absence in the big moments that hurts, it's in the spaces between. The pause before sleep. The empty side of the bed that still holds their outline. The mug in the cupboard that no one else will ever use. We think love is built on grand gestures, anniversaries, trips, promises whispered under the stars. But love hides in the ordinary, the routines, the habits, the small repetitions that become the rhythm of two lives intertwined. And when that rhythm breaks, when the dance ends, you're left stumbling, searching for steps that no longer exist. That's why the pain feels so disproportionate. You didn't just lose a partner. You lost a version of yourself that existed only with them. You lost the mirror that reflected back the person you were in their eyes. The jokes you only made because they laughed. The courage you felt because they believed. The tenderness that surfaced because they softened you. And when they walk away, it feels as if they're carrying those parts of you with them, leaving you smaller, unfinished. The world doesn't pause to grieve with you. It keeps moving, brutally indifferent. You still have to answer emails, wash dishes, smile politely at neighbors, but beneath it all is a rawness that lingers like an open wound. Friends tell you to move on, as if healing were a straight line you could walk in a matter of weeks. But grief is never linear. It circles back. It ambushes you at red lights, in coffee shops, in the scent of a stranger's perfume that smells just like them. And so you start to wonder, why does it feel this way? Why does the end of a relationship shake us so deeply that we feel unmoored, as if the ground itself has shifted beneath us? Is it really just about missing a person? Or is it about missing the life we built with them, the identity we shaped around their presence? We expect heartbreak to sting, but rarely do we expect it to unravel us. Rarely do we anticipate the way it makes us question who we are, when love is no longer there to define us. So tonight, as we step into the psychology of loss and the philosophy of love, we ask the question that sits heavy in the chest of anyone who's ever stared at an empty phone screen, anyone who's ever reached for a ghost that no longer answers. Why do breakups feel like more than just losing a person? Why do they feel like losing ourselves? To understand why heartbreak feels like more than just loss, we need to look inward, not just into the heart, but into the brain itself. Because heartbreak is not only emotional, it is chemical, it is neurological. It is the body rebelling against the absence of someone it had grown addicted to. When you first fall in love, your brain floods with dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure and reward. Every smile, every text, every touch is like pulling the lever of a slot machine and hitting jackpot. You don't just feel good, you feel alive, electrified. The world glows brighter because your brain is lighting it up from the inside. But here's the catch. The brain doesn't treat love like a passing mood. It treats it like survival. Dopamine wires you to crave more, to reach again for the source, to keep seeking the high. That's why lovers can stay up all night talking without noticing the hours slip by. Why you can replay a kiss in your mind as if it happened seconds ago. Your brain rewards you for remembering. So, when the relationship ends, it's not only your heart that aches, it's your brain that goes into withdrawal. Suddenly, the texts stop. The touch is gone. The laughter no longer echoes. The source of dopamine is cut off, and your body reacts the same way it does when an addict is denied their substance. Cravings, obsessions, sleepless nights, the trembling need to just check their profile. One more time. Think of it this way. Love is not only emotional glue, it is biochemical Velcro. And when it's ripped away, the sting is not only emotional, it's neurological. But chemicals aren't the whole story. How much we hurt and how we hurt often depends on the patterns we've carried since childhood. This is where attachment theory steps in. Those with an anxious attachment crave closeness, fearing abandonment. In a breakup, their pain can feel unbearable. They check their phone every few minutes. They reread old texts like Holy Scripture. They replay arguments, searching for hidden meanings. Their nervous system is screaming, "Don't let go." On the other hand, those with an avoidant attachment might appear calm on the surface. They push away feelings, tell themselves they're fine. But inside, there is a quiet storm. Their way of coping is to numb, to bury, to distract. And yet, even they are not immune. A familiar smell, a shared song, the echo of their ex's laughter can unravel the illusion of distance. And then there are the securely attached. They still suffer, but they tend to accept loss more steadily. They recognize the grief, but they also recognize themselves outside of it. They don't confuse the end of love with the end of self. The cruel truth is this. Most of us carry some anxious or avoidant imprint, and when heartbreak hits, it pokes those old wounds, which is why the end of love rarely feels like starting from zero. It feels like reliving every loss, every goodbye, every moment of being left behind. That came before. Memory loops, the brain's endless replays. If dopamine withdrawal is the body's ache, and attachment wounds are the soul's, then memory is the mind's trap. The human brain is built to replay. It evolved to remember danger so we could survive. But in love, that same gift becomes a prison. After a breakup, your mind replays moments on a loop. The time they squeezed your hand in the movie theater, The last fight that ended with slammed doors. The morning you woke up and realized something had shifted. It doesn't matter if the memory is sweet or bitter. The brain doesn't discriminate. Both feed the loop. Each time you revisit it, the pathway deepens, like carving grooves into a record. And the needle falls into the same tracks, again and again. That's why heartbreak feels like time travel. 1 second you're at work, typing an email, and the next you're back on that street corner where you first kissed, your chest heavy with the echo of it. Or a song plays on the radio, and suddenly you're in their car. Your body remembers every detail, the warmth of their shoulder, the scent of their cologne, the way they sang off-key but smiled anyway. Grief doesn't stay neatly in the past. It hijacks the present. It sneaks into the future. It lingers everywhere memory can travel, which is to say, everywhere. Think of the way you open old conversations on your phone, scrolling through texts you know by heart. Not because you've forgotten, but because some part of you refuses to believe it's really over. Or the way you avoid the coffee shop you once visited together, because the chairs still hold their ghost. Or how, in the middle of the night, you reach for the other side of the bed, only to find nothing but air. This is why heartbreak is more than sadness. It is biology. It is psychology. It is memory turned against you. 1,000 tiny reminders stitched into your everyday life, unraveling one by one. And yet, hidden in this pain is a clue. What we grieve is not only the person we lost, but the self we built with them. Which is why the question lingers. If the brain clings so desperately to love, how do we ever let go? We humans live as if permanence were promised. We whisper forever in moments of love, as if saying it aloud could make time obey. Yet, deep down, some quiet part of us knows that everything we touch is temporary. Every embrace, every sunrise, every heartbeat. Still, we resist. We build routines, we make promises. We imagine a future where those we love remain unchanged. When that illusion breaks, when love ends, we are not just grieving a person. We are grieving the collapse of the story we told ourselves about how life would unfold. That is why impermanence cuts so sharply. It isn't only about absence. It's about the betrayal of our belief that what felt infinite could remain untouched. We suffer because the mind clings, and clinging turns change into suffering. The laugh across the dinner table, the late-night walk, the way they said your name. Moments that once felt light now become talismans you can't release. The more you try to hold them, the more they slip through your grasp, like water through cupped hands. Attachment is beautiful in its beginnings. It binds us. It makes the world feel safe. But the same threads that secure us also tie us to inevitable loss. We don't suffer because love is wrong. We suffer because we try to make love immune to time. We want it to stand still, even as everything in life is built to move. A breakup forces us to face what we avoid, that love, no matter how strong, is fragile, that people who once felt like home can become strangers, that nothing is guaranteed, and perhaps most terrifying of all, that we are far less in control than we want to believe. This is why heartbreak rattles our identity. Because it isn't just that someone left, It's that the version of ourselves who existed with them suddenly has no stage to stand on. Who are we when we are no longer their partner? When we are no longer the one they called at midnight or leaned on in fear? We feel as though we've lost not only a relationship, but an anchor that once held our sense of self steady. Loss is not polite. It drags us to the mirror and forces us to stare at truths we'd rather avoid. That we are temporary creatures in a temporary world, always at the mercy of endings. And in that confrontation, heartbreak becomes more than personal grief. It becomes an echo of the universal condition. Everyone, everywhere, will face the shattering of a bond they thought would hold. The pain is deeply personal, but also profoundly human. Think of the way a tree loses its leaves in autumn. Each leaf unique, each loss small, but the bareness that remains speaks to something universal. To live is to lose again and again. To love is to risk being torn apart. And yet, we still choose to love. Despite knowing its fragility, we lean in. We build connections. We create bonds. Maybe it is not foolishness, but courage. The courage to embrace beauty, even knowing it will end. So, when heartbreak arrives, it is not simply a story of you and one other person. It is the story of every human who has ever looked at something fleeting and wished it would last. It is the story of how we wrestle with impermanence, how we long for certainty in a world that offers none. It is the reminder that while endings may strip us bare, they also reveal the raw truth of our existence. That we are fragile, yes, but also capable of profound resilience. Heartbreak is not only a wound, it is a mirror. It shows us how deeply we can feel, how fiercely we can hope, how vulnerable we are to loss. It reminds us that meaning is not found in permanence, but in the fleeting moments we dared to treasure. And though it may leave us questioning who we are, perhaps that question is the beginning of something new. The chance to discover a self that exists not because of someone else, but because of the strength we find within when all else falls away. So, in the silence after love, in the heaviness that follows absence, we are not only grieving a person, we are learning to stand in the truth that nothing lasts. And yet life asks us to live fully anyway. When love ends, it feels like a collapse. The walls of your world crack, and you stand in the ruins wondering who you are without the one who once filled your silence. But endings are not only about loss, they are thresholds. A breakup is not just the death of a relationship, it is the death of an old self. The version of you who existed within that love has finished their chapter. And though it feels unbearable, this also means the possibility of rebirth. Heartbreak teaches us sovereignty. It reminds us that as much as we ache for the comfort of someone's constant validation, our worth cannot rest in the hands of another. The silence that once screamed like emptiness can become a sanctuary. The emptiness that felt like exile can transform into a canvas. The brokenness that stung like defeat can turn into a doorway leading you into a self you would never have discovered without this loss. To walk that path, we need both reflection and action. Healing is not passive. It is not about waiting for time alone to stitch you back together. It is about learning how to live inside the wound until it reshapes into wisdom. The first step is to stop chasing closure. We are taught to believe that every story deserves a final chapter, a neat reason, an explanation. But in life, many endings remain unfinished. People leave with words unsaid, with love still lingering, with promises broken without explanation. To demand closure is often to chain yourself to a door that will never open. Real healing begins when you learn to live without that answer. When you accept that some books close mid-sentence, and your task is not to rewrite their ending, but to begin a new one of your own. The second step is distance. It is tempting to keep checking old texts, to scroll through their photos, to haunt the places that still hold their echo. But healing requires space for newness to grow. Delete the messages. Mute the notifications. Take different streets. Let the wound breathe without constantly pressing into it. This distance is not about denial. It is about giving your heart the chance to stop bleeding into the past. The third step is to rebuild your routines. Relationships shape the rhythm of your days, and without them, time feels jagged and disoriented. Begin small. Cook meals for yourself, even if only simple ones. Start walking at the hour you once would have been on the phone. Fill the silence with music, with books, with activities that remind you life still pulses beyond the absence. In every new habit, you stitch back a piece of identity that belongs to you alone. The fourth step is to lean into discomfort. We are wired to run from pain, to numb it, to drown it out in distractions. But heartbreak is not the enemy. It is a teacher. Sit with it. Ask what it reveals about how you loved, about where you clung, about what you feared to lose. Pain is not only destruction, it is instruction. To resist it is to prolong it. To face it is to let it shape you into someone deeper, someone more resilient. The fifth step is solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude, the art of being with yourself. In solitude, you discover the self that doesn't depend on another's gaze to exist. This solitude is your workshop, your training ground. Write down what you feel. Create something, even if imperfect. Journal. Paint. Build. Sing. Let the rawness of loss become fuel for expression. Out of grief, creativity often blooms. Out of longing, wisdom is born. Because heartbreak, if endured with open eyes, can refine you. Grief can become resilience. Despair can give birth to courage. The ache of longing can soften into the wisdom of impermanence. You rise, not in spite of heartbreak, but because of it. The self that emerges is one who knows both the fragility of love and the strength of surviving its loss. When the wound closes, you will look back and realize you did not just heal from a breakup. You were remade by it. The silence became strength. The emptiness became a canvas. The brokenness became a doorway. And as you stand on the other side, you may carry scars, but you also carry something greater, a self more whole, more sovereign, more alive than the one who once believed love could never end. We don't just heal from breakups, we are remade by them. If this journey speaks to you, if you want to keep exploring the hidden forces shaping love, identity, and the human soul. Subscribe to Beyond Persona Lab. The story doesn't end here. It only begins.